Must have gotten quiet because it's like a library. So the library, Friends of the Library brought us peace and quiet this evening. Thank you. All right, you ready? Good. City of Southport Board of Aldermen meeting, October 12th, 2023 is now called to order. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you, board, city manager, city staff. Thank you for being here. Citizens, welcome, and welcome those who are watching virtually. Our invocation tonight will be by Reverend Alderman Lowe Davis, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. But first, when we stand, I would like for us to have a moment of silence for Chief Herman Strong. He is the grandfather of our police chief, Todd Corey. So please stand, we'll have a moment of silence, and then we'll have our invocation by Alderman Davis. Amen.
Before we pray, I'd like to call your attention, if you don't know this, that we are in the middle of the 69th anniversary of Hurricane Hazel, the most devastating hurricane to ever hit the Carolina coast. On the morning of October the 15th, 1954, Mrs. Jessie Stevens Taylor, Southport's unofficial volunteer weather lady and weather observer and keeper of the weather tower, early that morning she went out and raised 2 flags. Both of them were red flags with a black square in the middle. And what the 2 of them together meant was hurricane coming, and it's a bad one. And sure enough, it was. This was the beginning of the longest day for Southport. You can read about it in Our State magazine. The July 2012 issue has an incredibly gripping story of that day. And I recommend it to you, especially because you can read it online for free. And keeping in mind that we are still in the middle of hurricane season and you never know what could be coming. Let us pray. Almighty, most merciful God, we pray that we who year to year face the uncertainties and potential of devastating hurricanes, we ask that in your mercy you give us the wisdom to be prepared, and that you give us comfort and peace all the days of our lives. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Alderman Davis. And again, remember Chief Todd Coring and his family in your prayers on the passing of his grandfather, Herman Strong. Next on our agenda, item D, is public comment. Madam Clerk.
Bonnie Bray.
Make sure your microphone is on, state your name and your address and your topic. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Hatem, Board of Aldermen. My name is Bonnie Bray. I live at 515 Quartermaster Drive in Southport. I'm here as a member of Up Your Arts Board of Directors. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'd like to update you on the latest stage of our work to create an arts center in downtown Southport from the old courthouse building and former City Hall on Moore Street. In July, Up Your Arts began interviewing potential candidates for a new board of directors specifically established to take the proposed art center from construction to completion. Our chair, Bob Gentili, updated you on our progress during your August 10th regular session, and I'm here tonight to present the results of our efforts. We have selected a total of 17 people to join this new board. Many are people whose names you may recognize on the list that you have before you. Do you? You do, good, good. All right, so you have the list of names with short biographical information and contact information. So you may recognize some of those names, others you may not. We are so fortunate that every single one of them comes fully loaded with the professional background and personal characteristics we were hoping to find to take this new venture forward. This is the first time that the list of names and biographies are being made available to the public in connection with the Save the Hall Y'all project. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce you to the inaugural Board of Directors for the Center for the Arts in Southport. Before I begin the list of names, we have one of those people, Tom Bice, is on the list, number 3 here, and the others we hope to be able to get together with you soon. The 17 people are Jessica Abbott of Southport, Mark Bashara of Southport, Tom Bice of Southport, Norm Brown of Southport, Denny Deloge of Bolivia, Pamela Garvey of Southport, Jack Hamilton of Southport, Morgan Harper of Southport, Dennis Hetzel of Holden Beach, Edward Iglesias of Bolivia, Ken and Vicky Legere of Southport, Julie Mercer of Southport, Kay Ross of Southport, Brad Sevelson of Southport, Tina Smith of Ash, and Stephen Tabankin of Bolivia. Alderman Tom Lombardi and Community Relations Director Randy Jones have been included on your list there because they spoke with Up Your Arts about participating on the new board in a capacity that would not conflict with their current roles in city government. If the aldermen approve, we would very much appreciate working with both of them as liaisons between the city and the new board to facilitate the progression of the project and expand the lines of communication to the greatest extent. The center directors will hit the ground running with their first 2 meetings occurring this Saturday, October 14th, and next, October 21st. Although Up Your Arts will help them initially to design the organization's mission, structure, and goals, the 2 boards will function independently after that. We hope, again, to introduce them to you personally in the very near future. So, thank you for your time and your attention to this project and this announcement. We're really happy that we're at this point. It's been a long haul. Appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Terry Duff.
I'm assuming this is still on? Good evening, Board, Mr. Mayor. My name is Terry Duff. I reside on 6519 Walden Pond Lane. If you're not familiar with that area, it's the very end of Bethel Road Southeast. So I'm here as a representative for the spokesperson for a 250-person group that fought the sewer treatment plant roughly 4 years ago. So we're here twofold. One, to extend a heartfelt gratitude to Mayor Hayden, the leadership, the tenacity, and the focus that helped beat that planned, City of Southport plan to build a sewer treatment plant on a very environmentally fragile area. So kudos to the staff, kudos to Dr. Hayden, Mayor Hayden. I always use the doctor as an acknowledgement as opposed to mayor. So my apologies if I'm offending anybody. So if you're not familiar with the history, and this will be very brief, the City of Southport annexed 440 plus acres back in 2016, a non-contiguous region. So you can go from here out to Bethel Road Southeast, and there's lots of areas that are not a part of Southport. The 440 acres were annexed prior to my moving here 10 years ago. The plan of record was the city attempted to build a sewage treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant on that property without understanding in its totality what the impact to the environment, property values, quality of life. So at the end of the day, the city did the right thing by partnering with the county commissioner in making a really wholehearted effort to consolidate with the county and let the county handle the wastewater treatment and water treatment for the city of Southport. So kudos again, thank you for everybody who participated and helped drive that position. Secondly, we are now with a new upcoming election. I would like publicly for each alderman to state their position on the potential sale of that property to the North Carolina State Conservancy. I know they've tendered an offer to buy the 440 acres. And what that would do is, in perpetuity, make that a nature park, a greenway, whatever verbiage you'd like to wrap around it, so that we don't have to come back every 2, every 4, every 6 years and fight the same honorable objective. I know there was a mining company, Pelote, that wanted to lease, buy part of that property. The misnomer there is when you dig on that property, it's a swamp. When you dig 15 feet down, that hole fills in with water. So if anybody in their naivety thinks they can lease it to Pelote and get property back and sell that property, there is no property to sell. That property will fill up with water. It floods every single hurricane. In the last 10 years, we've been through 4 hurricanes where we live. That property is usually under 1 or 2 feet of water. So I would like the aldermen, maybe not at this meeting, but when we have a positional statement from the alderpersons that are running, to understand what their position is. Do they support or do they non-support the potential sale of that 440 acres? So thank you very much. Thank you for both the guidance and the leadership. We appreciate it. I will communicate back to our 250 plus members this meeting. Some are dialed in, but we would like to hear back from everybody so we have a clear position on everybody's potential vote. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. Madam Clerk.
Jenny Prunty? Mayor Hayden and Board of Aldermen and city officials, thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight. It appeared from watching yesterday's online special board meeting that there was some controversy among the board members related to the announcement statement for closed sessions. There seemed to be some disagreement over what has to be disclosed to the public in the agenda's closed session item related to the purchase of real estate. To clarify the requirements, our city manager invited our city attorney to tonight's meeting. The need for improved transparency has been something that our residents, city staff, and officials all have agreed to be a priority for our city. However, the same vague, closed agenda description related to the purchase of real estate is again on tonight's agenda, on the last page, right there. We, the public, need and have a right to know the location of the property, the seller's name, and its intended use. The current description, like the one on this page, on these agendas, is not being transparent. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
That was the last one that signed up, but I do have a statement from Shirley Sullivan that I'll read.
Okay.
Mayor, Board of Aldermen, City Manager, staff, and residents of Southport. I was unable to attend last week's Board of Aldermen meeting, and I was concerned about the North Carolina Department of Transportation Project 211 update that was on the agenda. I have continued to be concerned of the illegal left turns across 211 in both directions near the 133-211 intersection. The illegal left turns are being made directly near the CVS pharmacy on one side and the veterinary on the other side. Illegal left turns are being made across double yellow lines.
Double yellow lines are to be interpreted as a raised cement island. Drivers can't drive over a cement island. I have been in contact with the Department of Transportation repeatedly regarding this problem. One of their responses, "It's okay to cross double yellow." I replied, "It's a double yellow. This is illegal." They responded, "That's Oak Island's jurisdiction. Get them to monitor the offenders." While I believe this may be resolved when the 133-211 intersection is finished, we have a major problem now. I have seen cars and delivery trucks attempting to cross in opposing directions at the same time. The southbound 211 lanes actually merge to one lane at this point. This is a very dangerous situation all night and day. I know you all hate signs, but all I request is no turns or illegal turn signs be placed in each direction in the middle of the double yellow section until the road work has been completed. This problem was extremely dangerous during last summer as our population grew. But as we continue to grow and more drivers use this method of illegal shortcut, accidents will be on the rise. If signs are in place, hopefully accidents will be reduced. For those coming to Southport crossings, just take the light to turn left at the 133-211 intersection. The drivers headed to the veterinarian will need to turn around further down 211 where it is legal. I'm sure this will not be favorable to those that use the shortcut to get to work, but I believe that we can reduce accidents at and near the busiest intersection in this area. Can someone with the City of Southport look into this and get back to me? Thank you.
Our police will be looking into that intersection, per the city manager. Is there anyone here that would like to speak that did not sign up? Be happy to have you come up and speak. Okay, great, thank you. Next is the ethics statement, and I'll go ahead and read it. If any members know of any conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest concerning matters on the agenda, please so state at this time. Any conflicts?
I have a conflict regarding item, I guess it's N2.
Okay. And anyone else? Okay. And I have a conflict on 3 of the items. It'd be item 3, system development fee, item 8, stormwater, and in item 9, the comprehensive master plan. I have a family member that works for Withers and Ravenel. They have not done any work for the city, have not worked on any projects related to the city, but I wanted to disclose that, and I will recuse myself on those 3 issues. Next item is item E, and that is the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, a second by Alderman Carroll.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out where we do this. So there was a question from the public about an agenda item here, and we're going to get to that agenda item at the end. And then we have been given this document from the School of Government that was written in 2014 that clearly states, at least it clearly states to me, that what Ms. Prutley was talking about is accurate. And are we going to address those issues?
So you know the attorney's sitting right here, and he will be addressing that when we get to that item. He said that he would like to do it at that time. So before we go into closed session, he will be discussing that in detail.
Okay, as long as we get to it.
All right. So anyway, we had a motion and a second concerning the agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item F, approval of the consent agenda. And there are 4 budget amendments on there. And a budget amendment is used to revise the working budget of the city to reflect changes that occur throughout the fiscal year. So budget amendment 2 is a Homeland Security Grant from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety for the purchase of a mobile camera unit, $45,000. Then the next, that is a grant, yes. That's a grant. The next budget amendment is $201,720 from the General Assembly in the state budget 2023-2024. And this is to our police department, and that is for a body armor and vehicle camera system, body worn rather, camera and vehicle camera system. And then the Amendment 4 on the budget amendment is also from the General Assembly. It's $90,000, and that's for the purchase of extrication and technical rescue equipment. Again, this is money given to the city and have to have this amendment to, for budgetary reasons. And then the fourth budget amendment is reimbursement from an insurance company for the cost of repair of 2 vehicles that are operated and leased by the police department. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Okay, Alderman Davis, and a second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion carried, thank you. Item G, special recognition. And we have 6 proclamations. I will come up and read them, and I'm very excited about these. October has some special proclamations that we do every year, and some are new, but some that we do every year, and I'm proud to do them. City of Southport proclamation in recognition of Kate Marshall. Kate, if you would come up. Whereas Kate Marshall began working for the City of Southport in September 2018, and whereas she has completed many training courses, including more recently the Disaster Response Overview Program in July 2023. Whereas Kate is very knowledgeable in her field and strives to educate the public on how to coexist with wildlife, as well as establish community cat programs. And whereas Kate hosts or participates in many community events, including the Halloween Bowser Bash, Pictures with Santa, and Nature Fest. Whereas Kate also served in the armed forces and has experience in both law enforcement and the fire service. Whereas in 2015, Wilma Magazine launched its Women to Watch Leadership Initiative with the mission to help develop more women leaders in Wilmington area businesses, nonprofits, government bodies, and boards of directors. Whereas the annual awards program started in 2012, spotlights finalists and winners in 7 categories: arts, education, healthcare, business, public service, nonprofit volunteer, and rising star. Whereas Kate was nominated in the public service category for the 2023 season and is a glowing example of dedication to the public. Now, therefore, I, Joseph P. Hayden, Mayor of the City of Southport, on behalf of the Board of Aldermen and the city staff, do hereby congratulate Kate Marshall on her nomination as a 2023 Wilma Awards Woman to Watch. We are proud of all your accomplishments and wish you all the best for your future. Proclaimed this 12th day of October, 2023. You're very photogenic. Thank you. City of Southport proclamation in recognition of Elena Dale. Elena, if you would please come up. Whereas Elena Dale was born and raised in Oriental, North Carolina, and graduated from UNC Wilmington in 2017. Whereas Elena previously served as the office administrator at the National Society of the Colonial Dames of America before she started with the City of Southport. And whereas Elena Dale was hired as Assistant Community Relations Director in July 2021 and dove into her position with enthusiasm. And whereas Elena Dale has helped the City of Southport improve the processes for posting community information and helped administrate the 4th of July Festival and other seasonal festivals. Whereas Elena helped revise the process for reserving the community building and Indian Trail Meeting Hall to balance the expense of maintaining the building. And whereas in June 2015, Wilma Magazine launched its Women to Watch Leadership Initiative to help develop more women leaders in Wilmington area business, nonprofits, government bodies, and boards of directors. Whereas in 2023, Elena was nominated for the Wilma Magazine Women to Watch Leadership Initiative in the Rising Star category, and whereas Elena Dale was selected as the recipient of the 2023 Wilma Awards Women to Watch Rising Star Award and was presented her award on September 8th, 2023. Now, therefore, I, Joseph P. Hayden, Mayor of the City of Southport, on behalf of the Board of Aldermen and the city staff, do hereby congratulate Elena Dale on being the recipient of the 2023 Wilma Awards Women to Watch Rising Star Award. We are proud of all you have achieved and look forward to seeing all you accomplish in the future. Proclaimed this 12th day of October, 2023. This next proclamation, of course, is close to my heart. This is the City of Southport proclamation in recognition of Emergency Nurses Week, October 8th through October 14th. And Kelly and Joan, if you would come up with me, please. Thank you for being here. Whereas there are approximately 90,000 emergency nurses in the United States who have expertise in caring for all emergency patients across the spectrum of lifespan, ushering life in at birth and allowing for dignified death. And whereas emergency nurses are highly trained to recognize life-threatening problems and solve them on the spot, playing a vital role in treating patients in emergency situations, caring for those most in need, and saving lives daily. And whereas these characteristics provide a broad scope of practice for the delivery and complex care within a limited time frame to healthcare consumers of all ages and backgrounds. Whereas through research, education, and emergency nursing advocacy, the Emergency Nurses Association supports and honors the advancement of professionalism of emergency nurses everywhere. Now let us join together to honor extraordinary acts of service, compassion, and commitment that emergency nurses provide to patients every day, and especially to honor the emergency nurses at J. Arthur Dozier Memorial Hospital. Now, therefore, I, Joseph P. Hayden, Mayor, do hereby proclaim October 8th through 14th, 2023 as Emergency Nurses Week, in testimony whereof I hear to my hand to be affixed the Great Seal of the City of Southport on this 12th day of October, 2023. Here we go, ladies. Yes, they're right on. Yeah. Thank you. Truly, two great nurses. We're so lucky to have this hospital here and this emergency room so close and nearby and viable for all of us. City of Southport proclamation in recognition of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October 2023. Again, something close to my heart and also to Alderman Allen and hopefully to all of us. Whereas October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is an annual campaign to awareness of this disease. And whereas National Breast Cancer Awareness Month remains dedicated to increasing public knowledge about the importance of early detection and treatment. Whereas it is estimated the National Cancer Institute that there will be 281,550 new cases of breast cancer in 2023, and 43,600 will die from the disease. And whereas due to improved early detection with advanced technology such as 3D mammography, which is available at Dozier Memorial Hospital, and through medical research, and with more innovative therapeutics and surgical intervention available, there is a 90% 5-year survival rate as compared to 80% in 1990. And whereas with the utilization of annual screening, early detection, and advanced therapies, breast cancer patients are living longer. And now, therefore, the City of Southport Board of Aldermen would like to recognize breast cancer survivors and those battling the disease. We wish to honor and celebrate their resolve and their resilience. We also recognize the family members and the friends who are affected by this disease are an inexhaustible source of support and comfort. We all hope for the day when medicine and its institutions, including the National Cancer Institute, Sloan Kettering, MD Anderson, as well as the university medical schools, such as UNC School of Medicine at Chapel Hill, will find a cure. Whereas the Board of Aldermen, city manager, city attorney, city employees, and the citizens of Southport will wear pink ribbons and pink clothing, including pink Chuck Taylor All-Stars, to honor and celebrate our neighbors, family, and friends who are breast cancer survivors, and quietly mourn and remember those we have lost. Therefore, I, Dr. Joseph P. Hayden, Mayor of the City of Southport, do hereby recognize all those who have been affected. I encourage all citizens, agencies, organizations, and groups to participate in activities that will increase awareness, support prevention, early detection, treatment, and research concerning breast cancer, and do so hereby proclaim October 2023 Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Another proclamation very close to my heart. City of Southport proclamation recognizing Fire Prevention Week. Thank you, Chief. Beautiful. Whereas this year marks the 100th anniversary of Fire Prevention Week, 1922 to 2022, and whereas it's also the 101st anniversary of Southport's Model T fire truck, which is in part a symbol of fire prevention in our city. And whereas the theme for fire prevention this year is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape. And whereas in 1920, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed October 9th the first Fire Prevention Day, calling on the public to learn more about the risk of deadly fires and commemorating the thousands who had lost their lives to these tragedies. And whereas we stand by our brave firefighters, Southport Fire Department and their chief, Charles Drew, who respond to fires, but also emphasize prevention all year long with education programs in our schools and in our community, and with the assistance of installation of smoke alarms. Now, therefore, I, Joseph P. Hayden, Mayor of the City of Southport, do hereby proclaim October 8th through 14th as Fire Prevention Week and urge all citizens to make your homes and businesses fire prevention ready. This day, the 12th of October, 2023. Thank y'all. And this is not the first time I've seen three of them today. on a house call. It required calling 911, and I was so proud of our EMS. They were there, ready, and it made a big difference in the care of this patient. So I appreciate all that our firefighters, our EMS, and police do. Next proclamation, I spent a good bit of my life in a library on many different campuses, so I'm happy to read National Friends of Libraries Week 2023. If you will come up, Carol. Thank you. Whereas Friends of the Library, Southport and Oak Island raise money that enables our library to move from good to great, providing the resources for additional programming, much needed equipment, supporting for children's summer reading, and special events throughout the year. Whereas the work of the Friends highlights an ongoing basis the fact that our library is the cornerstone of the community, providing opportunities for all to engage in the joy of lifelong learning and connect with the thoughts and ideas of others from ages past to present. Whereas the Friends understand the critical importance of well-funded libraries and advocate to ensure that our library gets the resources it needs to provide a wide variety of services to all ages, including access to print and electronic materials, along with expert assistance in research, readers advisory, and children's services. Whereas the Friends' gift of their time and commitment to the library sets an example for all in how volunteerism leads to positive civic engagement and the betterment of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Joseph P. Hatem, Mayor of the City of Southport, proclaim October 15th through the 21st, 2023 as Friends of Libraries Week, and urge everyone to join the Friends of the Library and thank them for all they do to make our library and community so much better. Item H, and again, congratulations, Elena and Kate, on your special recognition for our city. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. Item H, our agenda. First is the electric rate study presentation, and that will be Mark Beauchamp, Utility Financial Solutions President. Thank you. And Ellie Pittenger, our Superintendent.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, distinguished board, friends and guests. One of the tasks that our city manager assigned, one of the first ones when she came aboard, was to do a complete rate study. We had done a couple of rate studies before, basically on paper, where we looked at some residential rates and we looked at some demand rates, and they were 5 or 6 years apart from each other. We decided to go ahead and do a complete full rate study, and this involved looking at all of our assets, all the transformers, all the substations, all the infrastructure, and put values on it and say, all right, now what is the cost to serve? What are we doing here? Are we charging too much? Are we charging too little? What are we doing? So we had that done, and that has come to fruition. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Mark Beauchamp, who is the president of Utility Finance Solutions. Mark?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here again. The PowerPoint? Gotcha. Okay, maybe. Oh, turn it on, Mark. Okay, got it. There we go. All right, well, thank you. I was here back in July, and as Ellie mentioned, I'm president of Utility Financial Solutions, and we do electric cost of service studies around the United States, 44 states, including several islands in the Caribbean and Barbados, Bermuda, Guam. And we do a lot of work in the North Carolina and South Carolina area. And if you remember the results of the study when I came here in July, you have a financial utility, or electric utility that is very financially stable. I mean, it's a newer system. It's only 32% depreciated, no debt, adequate cash reserves. And we recommended that you could either do 0 increase or a 2% decrease. And we were seeking the council's direction because the last step for us to complete our process is to do a rate design. And so we sought from council your direction on what the rate adjustment should be as far as the increase in revenues. And the feeling was that we should not do anything with revenue adjustments because if we decrease the rates by 2%, it would likely mean an increase in a few years of 2%. So it was felt just to keep them stable. The second part of the direction we look for was the study also does a cost of service analysis that identifies how much it costs to provide service to each class of customers. And in looking at it, what we notice is like your residential base rate is pretty good. But when you get into the load control groups, even though load control provides a value, the value that we were giving to customers for load control was more than what the value was that was provided. And of course that showed up in the cost of service study. So what the direction we received from council was to adjust the load control, give them some slight increases, no more than 4% in any class, to take that additional revenue that would be generated and to lower the large commercial demand rates down slightly with that additional revenue, because the cost of service study showed that they were substantially overpaying on their rates compared to the cost. So that's kind of a summary of, at least my perception of the summary from July. What I'm here to talk about today is, one, again, to review a few slides, but to show the rate design changes and to answer any questions. I believe you have 2 documents in front of you. One is the cost of service report and also the presentation that I'll be going through. And also, if I could ask that as I go through, I only have about 8 slides, but if there's any questions at all as I'm going through, please stop me and ask as I'm going through. This is the financial projection that we presented back in July. And this one shows the 2% reduction. As I mentioned before, you're financially stable, your electric utility. Your cash reserves, even with the 2% reduction, was projected to be above our minimum level of cash. Our target operating income, which in a sense is our upper boundary, we don't really like to exceed that, and we were slightly below it or really close to it each year. And of course, debt coverage ratio is not an issue because you're debt free. So that was just to, then this is the cost of service results. And this is what I was referring to with the load control. If you look at residential in the middle of the slide, you see that the regular residential, it's labeled SRO, shows pretty much, if you go to the outer end of it, percent change, 0.1%. And that's the difference between the revenue that we are projected to receive from the class and the cost of service results. You can see it's really, really close. But when you get into the load control groups, which is SR1, SR2, SR3, and SR4, basically what happens is you charge, I believe it's 12.4 cents, right around there, for residential per kilowatt hour. But each one of these load control programs, the energy rate is reduced by a penny. So in other words, if they have one load control, the 12.4 goes to 11.4. If they have two of them, it goes to 10.4, 9.4, and 8.4 cents. And as I mentioned earlier, even though it does provide the city with the value that we're incentivizing customers to go on the program that we're paying is greater than what we're receiving. And as a result, rates for other customer classes have to be slightly higher. And a lot of that is coming from the commercial classes. You see that the commercial shows a need for almost a 15% rate reduction. Not that we're going to do that, because any rate changes you want to phase in slowly over time for several reasons. One, you want to minimize or limit customer impacts. But also, when we do a cost of service study, it's a snapshot in time. And it will change over time. And so we don't want to move quickly, only to have to reverse it in a few years. So the process is to move slow, and in 3 to 5 years, update the cost of service study, see where we're at, and make adjustments again at that time. So the fixed monthly customer charge, you guys are in great shape with that. The cost of service studies showed that for like a residential should be about $23 a month. You're currently charging $26. And so you're slightly higher than that, but of course that's keeping your energy rates a little bit lower by doing that. And most of your cost of service fixed monthly rates were slightly higher in what you're charging than what the cost of service study showed. Now what we recommended doing for the most part is freezing those customer charges, not increasing them or decreasing them. So what this slide shows is a summary of our proposed rate design changes. Now we're not proposing changes in all the classes, only a few of them. Each one of these, you can see the SCO, there's no revenue change, that's the base residential. The SC1, which is the load control with one load control, they would see a 0.74% increase as a result of the changes that we made. Ones with two load control units would see a little less than a 2% increase. With 3 units, about 2.7%. And with 4 units, they would see a 4% increase. And that revenue that we generated is being used to lower the commercials by about 1.7%.
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just wondered, when you made your presentation before talking about lower or raising the rates for the 4 load classes.
Yep.
We talked about it incrementally. Do we need to do it multiple years? This says 1 year, so that's what I was
It's just
curious.
1 year, and I would recommend doing it in multiple years with the ultimate objective of moving away from giving a kilowatt hour break, in a sense, but transferring it to a fixed monthly discount. So in other words, if they have one load control unit, it might be valued at $5 a month. At 2 load controls, it may be 10. That way, the revenue that is going to match up with the cost. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. You have a demand charge that's billed to you from Duke. It's about, I think it's $21 per kW a month. So if you can reduce that peak demand by 1 kW, you save $21. So if you take like a water heater, average is about 1.1 kW potential draw. But a water heater operates about 4 to 6 hours a day, all right? So if we put one of them on load control and we go to interrupt them, maybe they're on and maybe they're not. All right, so you need to have at least 4 of them on at the same time to ensure to get 1 kW reduction or to get that $21 savings. Well, if we give them all a penny per kilowatt hour discount and they all use 1,000 kilowatt hours, they're all saving $10 a month. So we're giving them the incentive of $40, but we're only saving 20. So that's part of the reason why ideally you take that 20 and divide it by the 4 and give everybody $5. But by doing it on a per kilowatt hour basis, you're getting that 1 kW value, but you may have some customers that only use 500 kilowatt hours. Sorry, they're not getting as much value for it as a customer that uses 2,000 a month. Because if they have 2,000 kilowatt hours a month, they're getting $20 of incentive. If they're only using 500 kilowatt hours a month, they're only getting $5 of incentive. But they're both providing the same value to the city. In other words, the probability of lowering that demand by that 1 kW. Does that make sense? Any clarification, please, if you need it. But that's why it'd be more simple and more accurate to take that $20 savings, divide it by 4, because you need 4 customers to get that 1 kW demand savings, and give them all $5. Rather than to do it on a kilowatt hour basis, which gives more value to a high kilowatt hour user, which in some ways is what you're trying to disincentivize. You're actually giving the incentive to use more kilowatt hours. Or if you're a high kilowatt hour user, to go into one of these programs because you can save a lot of money, even though the value is the same as a 500 kilowatt hour customer. Does that make more sense? And most will give a fixed monthly rebate, not on a per kilowatt hour. I'll be honest, we've done work in 44 states. I've never seen a rebate program like you have. So, and that's why I would love to be able to eliminate it and change it to what, but if I do that too quickly, what's going to happen is your phones are going to start ringing off the hook. The electric utility is going to get a lot of complaints, and eventually it'll be fed to me. So I'm protecting myself, but protecting you. But I would love to be able to continue this process and do it again next year, and the year after, and eventually we get to a point where we can, maybe in 4 or 5 years, where we can do it on a flat rebate program. By that time, if I can, what I would love to see Southport doing, because you have AMI metering, and I will tell you, I got the best load research from your electric department than I probably ever got. It was excellent. We have the hourly load profiles for every single customer in your entire system. So we know exactly, theoretically, how much it costs to provide service to every one of them. Well, the next step with that kind of data is to implement rates that will give more incentive to shift usage with time of use rates and residential demand charges. I feel personally that time of use is something that when you look at residential customers, usually when you think nobody's used to billing electricity or getting their electric bill being charged different rates at different times. They're not used to it. But that's, in reality, that's what our costs are. That 1 kW that's being used at 7 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 o'clock in the evening is costing you $21. The rest of them is just costing it 2-3 cents. That's the reality of the price signals. Well, what time of use does is it takes that and it incentivizes customers to move away from the on-peak periods. And then they can purchase their own load control devices to help them shift their usage in a manner that's convenient to them, rather than to do the rebate programs like you have. Go ahead.
So you're hitting a topic that I'm very interested in, because I've not been able to grasp in my head the load control when it happens. And if we know that it's going to happen at 7 p.m. or whatever, I assume it fluctuates depending on the summertime. If we can put that out to people to let them know when that happens, they can turn off their own stuff. They don't even have to belong to our program. And they could save money.
Correct.
But we don't do that. We don't know when it's going to happen. The city knows when it's going to happen because we turn on generators and stuff when it happens.
Yeah,
We did turn on generators when it happened. So I'm trying to figure out, is it in the heat of the summer, is it normally between like a 2-hour block, or does it fluctuate really that much?
No, actually, and we won't look back a couple of years, but in the winter season, the peaks normally occur around 8 o'clock in the morning, and in the summer, it's about 7 o'clock at night. And it's fairly consistent around that time period.
Well, if people knew that, they could decide not to do their laundry and everything at 7 o'clock at night.
BEMC already sends out, I get alerts all the time about it.
I don't know. I certainly
Almost
don't.
all the time. Anytime it's hot or cold, I get alerts from BMC on my phone.
When, the utility could send an alert about it, but they're not getting any financial incentive. And when you give a financial incentive, they will purchase enabling devices that help them more conveniently shift their usage. Like, to give you the data that we've seen around the U.S., all right, when you have a time of use price signal with what's called a 2-to-1 price differential, all that means is, example, on-peak pricing at 20 cents, off-peak pricing at 10 cents. That's 2-to-1. You get anywhere from a 6 to 12% reduction in residential usage during the peak hours, almost immediately. And even though that's good, I want more. And what's going to happen is once they get used to that price signal, what's called price elasticity, which is currently that 6 to 12%, is probably going to more than double over the next few years as these enabling devices are purchased, be it setback thermostats. I mean, there's water heating control units, being able to control your appliances. They will have that incentive, and it will shift automatically their usage to other time periods conveniently for them. And what we need to be careful with is, even though your peaks right now are relatively consistent, and I know that Southport is not big enough to cause those peaks to change for the whole area, but we have to be somewhat careful not to send too strong a price signal either. So there's usually a balance. And that's where, we usually take the initial run at it, and then we go to council and we talk about the window, the price signal and how it works, and get that feedback to design something you feel that works for your community. What happens is most councils we work with like to have that on-peak window as short as possible, which is good, but when you have that short window, it drives the price up during that window. So that can be kind of a scary thing also. And that's where we need your insight.
So you remember that meeting slightly different than I do, because I was not in favor of any type of increase for load control. But with that being said, the 44 states that you say you work in, how does the health of our utility compare to others?
Oh, you're financially stable. I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, you're in great shape.
So perhaps
financially.
they should be doing what we're doing. No?
No, that's not really it's, how can I say this right? There's a lot of reasons and factors that bring you to this financially stable groupings, so to speak. Load control is not one of them. I'll be very honest with you. And it's not one of them because the incentive that's given is costing the utility more than the value of the reduction, if that makes sense. They're out of sync. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge advocate of energy reduction. It just needs to be done in a different way, that's all.
I'm not sure of my next question. Since we're talking about pricing here, I want to get all the pricing out on the table. And I'm not sure if Ellie should be doing this or not, but because he made the chart. So if I'm understanding, Ellie, your chart here, the base rate for Duke Power is 40% lower than our base rate. Am I reading that correctly? Now, I understand there's contracts and with the Power Authority and all of that stuff, but just so everybody understands where we are, we entered in something in whenever we entered it, 1972, whenever it was, and we're allegedly stuck with this for another few years. How many years that is, depending on who I ask, I get different numbers. But when I look at the chart that Electric Cities puts out, we're at the top end of the state of North Carolina for electrical rates. And this chart that you made, my math, maybe it's wrong, says the base rate is 40% lower if we had Duke Power.
Oh, I know, it's the customer.
Yeah, yes, Duke's base residential rate is $14 a month. Ours is $23 a month. Brunswick Electric's is $29.75 a month.
So I'm not smart enough to know if I'm looking just at one number, a base rate. I don't have the expertise to say, is the Duke product a better product overall than the product we're getting as far as cost goes? Because I don't know all the other things that go into it.
Well, their kilowatt hour rate is, they have a varying kilowatt hour rate that's highly based on time of use, and that's actually very similar to the hours that we go into load control.
Well, I learned one thing today, and I think we need to push this out. If people here know that you can get a ping on your phone when to turn stuff off, maybe we need to push that out. I mean, we do push out the fact that you can go into the load thing where they turn you off, but if we can have that same option without having to join that thing, because if I have my grandchildren here, I don't want my air conditioning going off.
We're actually working on that. We're compiling, myself in communications, we're compiling a load management. I have sent them a load management users list that they are working with to work on a notification so that our load management users will get notified whether or not we go into load control. The unfortunate thing is we don't know that weeks in advance. We don't know what hour of what day we're going to have to do that at the beginning of the month. We only know that basically we might get an idea a couple of days ahead of time because we can read what the weather is trending on doing. But in reality, we really don't know until we need to go in and actually shed that peak.
But generally, wintertime it's 8 a.m. and generally summertime it's 7 p.m. So if I pick those times, I'd be
that's correct.
I'd be hitting the ball more than more times out of the ballpark than missing it.
That's correct. In the wintertime, it's between 6 and 8, and in the summertime, it's been varying a little bit, but it's usually right around 7 p.m.
That's great information to know.
Just really quick, Alderman Allen, I think you have to sign up for it, but I did right away. And they will give you 3 hours heads up that it's going to happen. So if you are interested in that program, all you got to do is go on BEMC and sign up for it, and they'll tell you every time it's going to happen.
If you're a BEMC customer, yeah. That's correct.
And that is not, that's for anybody. You don't have to be on the load control to get the notification. Is that correct?
They send those notifications out regardless. They just send them to all their customers.
Who have signed up?
I'm sorry?
Who have signed up?
No, Brunswick Electric sends those notifications out to all their customers.
Okay.
Automatically. I know I wasn't enrolled when I had my apartment, and I was getting them.
Yeah, probably, it could be going to, whose ever phone number you put on your service application, so it could be going to a different number or something if somebody's not getting them. Just thinking.
So as we go forward, maybe we could clarify that and put it into a concise statement so we could put it on the website and push that out. And I thank you, Ellie, for doing this work.
You're very
And
welcome.
thank you, sir. That first time I understood some of that. Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Any further questions? Anybody? We're good? Okay, all right. Thank you. Very, very insightful. It says in our packet, motion to accept the final report from Utility Final Solutions and take into consideration their recommendations for final electric rates for residents and businesses of Southport.
Is the motion going to have what those recommendations are, or how do we do that?
Yeah.
We can attach them to
Yeah, it'd be
the
as a
motion instead of
tab.
having to go through everything, but Dory will make sure they're attached.
Okay, just so there's a record of it. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the final report from Utility Financial Solutions and take into consideration their recommendations for final electric rates for residents and businesses of Southport.
Okay, do I have a motion? Is there a second? Second by Alderman Davis. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to know what this means. We're not adopting these rates. We're not adopting these rates, correct?
You're accepting just the report that came in. That's the biggest thing.
Okay.
So what's the next step then?
Say that we're probably going to do something in conjunction with the budget time.
So this is all stuff that'll go into effect next July 1st? Okay.
Just make sure it's at 8 p.m. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Thank you for that interesting presentation and discussion. H2, item H2 on our agenda is the North Carolina Eastern Municipal Power Agency amended and restated full requirement power sales agreement, asking all municipalities to vote to agree to the changes, and I'll call on City Manager Bonnie Theron.
Okay, I'm going to do the best I can with this one because this is very complicated. Just so you know, the NCMPA Board of Commissioners and Electricity Board of Directors have already approved this agreement with Duke. And so I want to make sure that you are aware of that. But what they're asking you to do is really to vote on approving an ordinance that allows for this 10th Amendment to go through. And I put in your packet a cheat sheet and I'm not even sure I still understand the whole cheat sheet, but I did ask Rich Vandermaas from Electricity to stay on so that he can help me through this whole thing. So he's here to answer questions better. A lot of it has to do with alternative energy definitions, those types of things, and how we're going to be using those in the future. They are talking about definitions having to do with energy injection devices, which are battery storage, qualified generation caps, which are now going to be called qualified resources. They would maintain the cap at 1.75% of DEP system capacity, grandfathering existing battery installations, removing limits on location, allowing it to be located behind first or second meters. A lot of this is very technical information. And removing limits on ownership. So I don't know if Rich can help put that more into English for you, but he is here and I asked him to stick around, our Electric City CEO.
So you have these talking points in front of you. The only thing I can really add to them, if you've got any specific questions, these are results of us negotiating with Duke on behalf of the members to protect your rights to, like, just for instance, remove limits on locations allowing all qualified resources to be located either behind the first or second meter, retail notice, and that is protecting your citizens' rights to install solar on their properties in regards to how you want to deal with solar. Duke's not going to get involved. It's not something that they're going to do. That's something we negotiated on your behalf to allow your citizens to install solar if they wish to, and install it behind the meter, not to have a buy all, sell all requirement and that sort of stuff. So
is there a reason why, I mean, seriously, virtually I don't think there's anybody in this room that can read this and understand that. If that sentence meant that we could hook solar into it, why isn't those words in that sentence?
Because solar is in that sentence. It's a qualified resource. These are just talking points in that. When it defines in the overall agreement,
okay,
you would have, you know, under qualified resources, it lists things like solar and those sorts of things. These are just the talking points about, you know, and when you talk about qualified resources, you could talk about wind here on the coast, and solar and that sort of stuff. That is things. The batteries are a big one that, but they're direct injection devices that they've been defined here too. So it's just a matter of protecting your citizens' rights to be able to, under your direction and your limits, allow them to install solar and qualified resources at their locations.
Is geothermal a qualified resource?
I don't know. I'd have to research that.
So we need a motion. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the attached ordinance and have the mayor, yeah, got it. Have the mayor of Southport sign the 10th Amendment and reinstated full requirements power purchase agreement between the North Carolina Eastern Municipal Power Agency and Duke Energy Progress.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? A second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion?
Paul, is this a good idea?
Paul, I'm sorry, you have to go to the mic. You have to go to the mic,
I apologize for making you do that.
or have him go to John.
Paul, you can go right over here. My problem is agreeing to something that I really just don't understand it.
Yes.
Just what I can say about the agreement is it was a hard-fought discussion between DEP and the Operations Department at Electric Cities. a lot of discussions, a lot of compromise. We believe it is a good agreement.
Can I follow up just on that the one part there?
Yes, sir.
If someone were to install in this agreement solar panels, in some states they've now penalized those people for doing that. In some states they're allowed to sell the excess power back to the power company. Does anything in this whole thing address those issues?
No, that's totally up to you how you
That's left
handle
up to the
solar
city.
installed
Our
on
decision.
your system.
We would decide whether or not Duke Power is going to
No.
accept. No, we don't do that.
No. On your system, on your electric system, you define how the interconnection agreements that I believe you've passed, the avoided costs that you'll pay, whether it's a buy-all, sell-all, or a net billing scenario, on how you're going to repay the customers for whatever excess they put out on the system. Those are all determined by you and in your tariff.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item H3, and this is one of the items that I will recuse myself, but this is the system development fees presentation. Is Mr. Parker here, Darrell Parker? Yes, he is. I believe I met him earlier. And Tom Z, engineer. Thank you.
System development fee study that was done. This is a requirement under state law that it be done every 5 years. 2023 is our year to have it done. And there's a process after the presentation tonight that we then have to post the study online, make it public, and get comment on it for 45 days, and then come back here for a public hearing, and then adopt it. So with that, I will turn it over to Darrell.
All right, thank you, Tom. Good evening, Alderman, Mayor. I'd also like to recognize Shannon Moore. Shannon is with Withers Ravenel, and we've teamed with them on this project, as we have done on several similar projects. So it was a team effort, along with Bonnie and Dorothy, and Tom was part of that team. And as you heard from your electric rates earlier, the team was great, the data was great, made for a very smooth and successful project. So just so you know, when I'm doing a presentation on an educational presentation on these types of fees next week, and it's going to be 45 minutes long. You got lucky tonight. Bonnie asked me to keep it to 10, so I'm going to do my best to do that, but seriously, if you do have questions, please stop me, or we can address questions at the end. So as Tom kind of mentioned, the state has very specific legislation on how these fees are to be calculated, adopted. So what we're talking about, SDF, that's short for system development fee. It's just similar to an impact fee or capacity fee. So there's a House bill that defines in the state of North Carolina how they're going to be addressed. It's only imposed on new development. So basically it protects your existing customer base. And you guys have fees already in place. So you've probably heard some of this about 5 years ago. So what it does is it funds the cost of utility improvements that the city and the utility have incurred to facilitate future development. And so it's here again, it kind of mitigates the rate impact on your existing customer base, because those are capital projects that have to be funded, but not necessarily by the current customers. So the state does define certain procedures. So an analysis has to be prepared by a professional, financial professional. That's where Shannon and I come in. So generally accepted accounting and engineering procedures, and you can see in quotes, a lot of this is right out of the legislation. So you have to have a capital improvements program, what we call a CIP, minimum 5 years up to 20 years. and you guys met that requirement. As Tom mentioned, the report that we've put together has to be posted for 45 days on your website, and the purpose of that is to provide kind of that transparency to the public, and also solicit any input from your residents. It does require a public hearing, so that would be your next step after the 45-day posting period. So what the state is their intent is to allow for any input, any changes that maybe need to be made. So if you do get any public input, which I can tell you, we've been doing this since the state adopted this legislation back in 2017, I've not gotten any public feedback for changes. So I wouldn't expect that here either. So the fee does have to be adopted by resolution or ordinance, which you would do that anyway. And it does need to be readdressed every 5 years. That's kind of where we are now. You adopted about 5 years ago, and it's time to look at it again. So the state kind of defines the methodology. The methodology defined by the state actually is consistent with American Water Works Association. It's called Manual M1, which is what we use for designing rates and doing cost allocations, but it also addresses these types of capital-related fees. There we go. So there's 3 different methods. There's the buy-in method that looks at your existing assets, your existing lines in the ground. How much did they cost? What's the current value of those facilities? The incremental or marginal cost method, which looks at your CIP, your future projects, what you need to fund to continue to facilitate growth. And then there's the combined method, which is kind of a hybrid of the two, or kind of a weighted average, if you will. And that's the method that we settled on as a group for this study, the combined. Don't get too bogged down in the numbers. I just want you to see kind of the general process. We looked at the existing facilities, the capital improvement. Now, your CIP, it kind of defined what projects needed to be done, what the costs were for the existing. What we do is we take asset listing that you would use for accounting purposes, go line by line, and value those to today's dollars and come up with what we call replacement cost new less depreciation. There's a whole discussion about that in the report, and I mean, if you're ever having a hard time sleeping, just open it up and take a look. So the capital program is included with that, and so we've got our combined recoverable costs. Now there are also credits to those costs. The credits for the existing assets are your current outstanding debt. The reason we apply that type of credit is we want to make sure there's not a potential for over recovery, because that debt is currently being paid with your user rates. And then there's also a CIP credit that's required by the state. And so I think kind of the intent is probably the same, because some of those facilities will be funded from debt in the future. So we come up with our net cost. So here's kind of a visual of what it looks like. We've got our existing, and then our CIP, our incremental. We combine those, and we come up with a total cost. We subtract out the debt service credit and the CIP credit, and so that gives us our net amount for recovery. And that's what we can use to start calculating a fee. So here's our methodology. You saw we've got our net amount. We break those costs into treatment and transmission components. The reason being, your treatment facilities have a different capacity than your transmission facilities. For example, on the sewer side, collection facilities fall into treatment. We just wanted consistent terminology. So you divide your treatment cost by your treatment capacity. We come up with a cost per gallon of capacity. We do the same thing on the transmission side. The math is not really that tough. It's just coming up with the numbers to do the math. And so when we do those net costs, and we've got our capacities in there, and those capacities are pretty well defined. We come up with and you don't own any water treatment facilities right now, but you do have, or excuse me, you're not adding any new water treatment facilities. But on the sewer side, you are. You can see that that's a pretty big treatment facility number that you're working with the county on that one. And so that's kind of what's driving up that sewer cost. So we come up with a cost per gallon of capacity. You can see the treatment facilities are driving that number. So then again, we can take that information. So we've got our cost per gallon of capacity times what we call our level of service. Our level of service is what does one equivalent residential unit require in terms of capacity. The state of North Carolina uses 400 gallons per day. So we've used that same number, which is same as what was done 5 years ago in your last study. So we can come up with the system development fee per ERU, per equivalent residential unit. For sewer, state of North Carolina defines sewer capacity. I don't know why they don't kind of work together on this, but they are two totally different groups. So it's 3 bedrooms at 120 gallons per day. We've defined as one ERU, which comes up to the 360. And so that'll give us our sewer fee per ERU. And here's what those fees look like. You've got the existing, and this would be, one typical residential household, which is going to be maybe not quite 100% of your new growth, but probably close to it. And so, so the water fee, now I have to caveat this, it's, you can, what we're providing is kind of a max that we can legally defend and support. You can kind of put it wherever you want. You just wouldn't typically want to go higher than what we've got in there as the calculated fees. So you can see based on our calculation, over the last 5 years, your costs have gone up a little bit and a little more so on the sewer side. And so that would be your new fee per ERU. And got a note in there is rounded down. We always round down because we want to make sure we're not accused of over-recovering, even if it's $1. So this is your current structure, and so we just applied those fees to the methodology that you currently use. This is kind of by here again, the residential is by the number of bedrooms. You've got barbershops, churches, all kind of different food facilities, hotels, motels, and these this what we kind of call by unit type. The state provides those numbers. So they're, here again, legally defensible. A little cumbersome might be the only issue. So what we have done is offered you another potential method where, and here again, this is something that can be supported by American Water Works Association standards, is you could just do it by meter size. These are meter equivalency factors. And here again, right out of the AWWA manuals, so we're just doing the math of whatever that one ERU is times the next meter equivalency. I'm not suggesting that you do that, just throwing it out as another option if you determine that the current methodology becomes a little cumbersome. But here again, most of your growth is going to be normal residential growth anyway, so it's probably not that big of a deal. So I think I got us in under 10 minutes, but I would like to open it up for questions.
Okay, any questions?
I do, sir. On the charts that we have in pages 100 through 103, which is part of the thing you had up there, you clearly list what the current existing residential rates are, and then you had the proposed residential rates for the 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. And they go up, if I'm doing my math correctly, about 20% per unit, 1, 2, and 3, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. But all the other ones, barbershop chairs per chair. If I want to start a barbershop in Southport, it says that I'm going to have to pay $3,000 per chair. And so is that what, I don't know what the current rate is.
Well, yeah, we haven't done existing versus proposed. I mean, you guys have fees already adopted. I mean, we just haven't done a slide that does that comparison.
Okay, so I'll take that up with the manager is about when we advertise this, how do we advertise it? So people should know how much it's going to go up. I mean, if you're trying to do business here, and it's going to cost you $3,000 a chair, or for a restaurant, it's $3,000 a chair. Just think about that, a four-top. Am I going to start my business here, or am I going to start my business someplace else in the county, over the line?
Well, in a study like this, I mean, somebody coming in here 2 years from now, they're not going to care what the fees were 2 or 3 years ago. So, I mean, they would care about what are they right now. So here again, we've got that comparison in our analysis model. But we didn't do it here. I mean,
do we know what if I was to go into the county, which is maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles up the road here, what would those fees look like to do in the county?
Oh, I couldn't tell you that, sir.
I've been told numbers, but I don't know that they're accurate, like 1/3 of our rates. So
what we do sometimes is a comparison of the typical residential, because a residential it's pretty homogeneous. When you start looking at businesses, there's no like typical commercial or typical restaurant or typical barber. It can be all over the board. So
this is all predicated because this is what we asked you to do. Your statement of work was to do this, what you did, and I applaud you for that. But the statement of work is predicated on we're going to keep the sewer, and we're not going to keep the sewer. So.
Well,
I'm not sure how that impacts our 5-year plan if we're not going to have the sewer in 5 years. I don't know how soon we can get rid of it. But.
The reason we're doing this, my understanding is the state requires us to do this by December 31st, and there's no way we're going to accomplish the merger with the county prior to December 31st. So we have to do it, but we also have to realize once the merger with the county takes place, this all goes away.
Okay, I mean, I understood that, but we have to do this, we have to do something, because the state says we have to do it. But is the best, and I'm only talking out loud just for me, is it the best plan just to hold what we got until such time as we figure out, we got a presentation later on in this thing about merging with the county with the water, which, are we just going to raise the rates now and then have them fall away? I guess that's a discussion. I'm not asking you a question.
Sure.
But just how that's going to work as we try to encourage new businesses to come in here. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right. Well, I'd like to thank you and thank your team. Like I said, it was great data, very successful project, and we had good Zoom calls, and so finally got to meet everybody in person. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation.
Do you, City Manager, do you need anything from us on this, or you automatically
No,
going
in
to post it?
November, you will set the public hearing date for December. We're going to start posting tomorrow.
Okay, item H4 is the water merger feasibility study presentation. This is discussion only today. Is Mr. Gary Hartong here? There we go. Thank you, sir. He's with Wooten Consulting Company.
Oh, did I do the wrong thing? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Let's see here. Let me go back. Should I keep clicking forward?
Can you sing or dance, sir, for a couple of minutes, maybe?
It might be
tell a good story.
more interesting than the presentation, anyway. I can certainly proceed without the presentation. There are some numbers. I'll try to go slowly so you can make some notes, but and certainly we'll get out the presentation in PDF format so that you all can see it. But That seems as good as,
Yeah, can we
It's
post?
a part of the packet,
You
Dory
can
and
see it?
Cheyenne.
Yes. Can we push this back until they're able to get it? Can we just
Yeah, if you want to go
move
on
on to the next
other-
item
If
until
you
we?
want to go on to another agenda item, give us 5 minutes, Gary,
sure,
and then we
Absolutely.
can move on to the Park and Rec ordinance.
yeah,
Or-
great.
Or something else simpler.
We'll make it easier for everybody.
Yeah.
Stop. So we can go to,
You know, if I, sorry, if I could make a suggestion, if, since Tom Z's here, maybe you could do lead pipe, because I don't think that will take too long.
all
That'll
right,
give them
let-
time
let's-
enough to.
All right, let's do
get it up.
8.7, lead pipe inspections, presentation and discussion.
Okay, this is actually lead service line within houses. It's basically from the main through the curb stop meter and into the house. Basically, it comes through, the history of it is in 1991, the EPA published regulations to control lead and copper in drinking water. Regulation was known as the lead and copper rule, and since 1991, it's gone had several various updates to it. The rule, when originally done, required all water systems to monitor their house tap water for lead and copper content. And if you hit action levels that they determined, you would have to go and do actions to correct that and reduce it. The township, Southport did not exceed any of those actions at any point in time. As a matter of fact, they actually, because of the samples that they were taken, they're on reduced testing capacity. Currently, they have to take 20 samples every 3 years. So there was not an issue in town with it. That doesn't mean there aren't lead service pipes. It just meant nothing hit the action level that was requiring any action. In 2021, the EPA put an amendment out to the regulations, and that was that all water systems had to develop an inventory to identify the materials used on the services going into the house. And that survey has to be completed by October 16th of 2024, next year. The inventory requirements are that all service line connections have to be included regardless of ownership status. Most, if not all, of the service lines are owned by two people, the city and the resident of the house. And that split is usually at the property line where the curb stop and meters are. From the meter into the house is the customer's responsibility, and they're owner of that. All the service lines have to be classified as either lead, galvanized requiring replacement, non-lead, and when it comes to the non-lead, you are allowed to say what it is, copper, plastic, or whatever, or an unknown. To do this, you have to go through historical records. You could also do visual inspections, excavate when you're doing work on the system, installing meters, things like that, to keep track of this. After the inventory is completed, we have some requirements for publicizing it. Being that we're a small system under 50,000 people, we don't have to post the inventory online. We can just print it somewhere, keep it, and let people know that it's there. And we're required to make it publicly accessible. So like I'm saying, we could just let people know we have the inventory of all the services, and it's kept in X location. The inventory has to have location identifiers for all the lead services and the galvanized requiring replacement lines. And in the notices, we have to include instructions on how to access the inventory. Now, people that are served by a lead service line, a galvanized requiring replacement, or an unknown must be notified within 30 days of us completing the inventory that they have such, whether it's on our side or their side. And that notice needs to include a couple things. It needs to include a statement about the service line material, what the health effects of that line material are, and steps to minimize it. Information about opportunities to replace the service line, available programs providing funding to assist with that replacement, and a statement that if they replace their portion of it, we will replace ours. We're required to. The unknown service line notice must include some additional information about opportunities to verify the service line material. You know, that could be dug up, whatever. And we as a system must submit a copy of the notification to the Public Works Supply section of the DEQ by July 1st for the previous calendar year. So we have to send a notice to the state that we notified the people that had the lead galvanized or unknowns. And you have to have proof of that. Once the inventory is complete, that's not it. It doesn't just sit on a shelf. We have to constantly update it as we find out more information. If there's a service line break and we go out and see that it's lead, we need to change that in the inventory if we had it as an unknown. If we listed it as copper and we find out it's plastic, we need to make those kind of changes. As homeowners replace their side that's lead, same thing. We have to constantly update this document and submit it to the state as we update it. After the inventory is complete in 2020, or after the deadline date in 20 and 24, at the current time, there is no regulation for replacement unless you're a system with more than 10,000 people and you exceed the trigger or action levels. So that's not us. Those regulations are probably coming out in the next year or two from the EPA on what the replacement program will be. So we don't know. What have I been doing to get this done is I've gotten a list of every water account that we have, and I'm going through that, looking at the installation dates that are listed on that. And the installation date is very important because anything installed prior to 1990 or after 1990 is more than likely not lead because there was the lead ban put into effect in the 1980s. So as I'm going through, at first I thought, oh God, half the city is going to be lead services, and what I'm finding out is it's a lot less. I'm about a third through all the houses, and you know, I can't guess at what it is, but it is greatly reduced from what I initially thought. The next part of it is, and this is the important thing, we don't know what's on the customer side. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to put some stuff on the website and also information in the bills to have people look in their house to see what it is coming in. We're setting up the website so they can notify us by that about what service is coming out so we can update the inventory. I expect to have our side of the inventory done by January 1st, and then we'll wait and see how we're doing with the residents coming in and letting us know what they have. And like I said, we have until October of next year to get this posted to be in compliance. So it was a lot of stuff, I know, and I spoke fast.
And I happened to walk in on you one day when you were doing this, and the paperwork is mounds and mounds of paperwork. So did I hear you correctly, sir, that up until EPA comes out with some mandatory replacement schedule, that at this point, for budgetary purposes, we're on the hook if the homeowner knows that he's got lead or whatever it is, and he decides or she decides to replace it, we would have to do it on our side as well?
Correct.
And maybe when you get all done with you, when you figure out how many lead there are, we'll have some kind of guesstimate of how we budget that in a budget cycle, because we're going to have to put new money in to do that.
Exactly. That's why the hope is, you know, that I'm going to get our side done in January, and that'll give enough time to, and the sooner we get this out to the residents, the sooner I could start going through their side to come up with a hard cost number of what we're going to need to budget. And, you know, then it becomes, do we budget for all of them in 1 year because we think everybody's going to do them in 1 year? Do we spread them out?
It's yeoman's work, and thank you very much for doing that, sir.
Any other questions?
Okay, good discussion. Okay, we will, we'll continue on this water theme, and we'll go to item H8. No, we got to keep going. If you need to get up, go. But H8, stormwater mapping and system evaluation contract award. And I'll recuse myself from this discussion. H8.
Give me a moment to pull that up. Okay. I feel like someone's standing behind me going, stretch, stretch, stretch. Okay. The next topic here is award of a contract to WK Dixon for the stormwater mapping and system evaluation. In last year's budget, $250,000 was appropriated by the board for this project. Then we also went and got a $250,000 Golden Leaf grant for the project, and we went out and got proposals, and WK Dixon was what we felt the most qualified person to do the project, and the contract is there. So I'll answer any questions.
Any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with WK Dixon for stormwater mapping and system evaluation services.
So motion, is there a second? Second by Mr. Lombardi. Any further discussion?
I just have a question that I just want to point out that during the last update of the UDO in 2020, we did not have engineering staff at that time, and so we did not have the staff to consider potential updates to Article 6 stormwater regulations in the UDO. So I hope this can also be part of that.
This is more of mapping the entire system. The current map that we're working off, if you want to call that, is from 1983 and hasn't been updated. This will get that system mapped, and then in addition to that, they're going to run a model of it to see where choke points are and come up with a capital improvement plan to improve the system to reduce the flooding. So the stuff that you're talking about is kind of separate from this, but that is definitely something that can be done with in-house staff now. Yes.
Tom, when you talk about choke points, my limited conversation with DEQ I was just talking about the west side of town, is that almost all of the ponds over there for new developments all empty into Cottage Creek when they overfill. And so my question to them was, do you ever look at the total amount of water that man is now forcing into that creek, or do you only look to see, is there a place to go? And the answer that I got was, we only look to see if there's a place to go, and we do not take the total amount. Will this study look at that total amount? Given, you know, the rains that we realistically have had?
It will in effect, because when they start modeling the system, that Cottage Creek would be part of what is mapped and what is flowing into it.
Specifically, I'm thinking of the very small culvert under 9th Street.
100% that culvert will be part of the evaluation.
Because
100%.
I can see that washing away, and now the school is separated from the rest of the world.
Yes. There's a couple of them around town.
No less the two ladies that are sitting over there.
And you.
Well, I don't count.
Okay, all right. And so we had a motion and a second. I believe we had a vote, and weren't you part of the further discussion or no? Yes. All right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed to this stormwater issue? All right. Motion carried. Thank you. So where to next, City Manager? Do you have a preference? I feel like it's like The Price is Right. Come on down, you know? All right. Okay. We'll do H9, comprehensive plan, consultant selection, and again, I will recuse myself. And Ms. Meehan, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. Thank you. I'm very excited for this presentation. As a planner, this is one of the really fun projects that we get to work with. We sent out an RFQ and received 2 proposals in September, or in August rather, I apologize, from Stewart Consultants and Withers Ravenel. In September, we did an interview. We had 2 separate interview panels that did the same questions and then the same scoring methodology. Both panels, the scores for Stewart were higher for each criteria across the board. So the criteria that we used was the similar project experience. So Stewart really works with small and mid-sized communities. They are familiar with the 7B CAMA land use plan requirements. So that was the one. The quality of submission and presentation, everyone felt that they researched and really understood the growth pressures that Southport was having and realized the unique character of the community. The team depth was they have planning, many years of planning, both current and long range. They have a historic preservation consultants available, and they do a lot of adaptive reuse, so with resiliency and sea level rise, some ideas there as well. Also, the next criterion was the public outreach and participation. Their approach to public input was really customized to the city's needs, and their process was catering to each municipality that we spoke with. So it wasn't a cookie cutter process that they use for every community that they come into. So that was really one of the biggest selling points, was their public input and participations. And then the timeline. We spoke with several of the communities, and the ones that had very positive feedback stated that they had a timeline and that they were finished many times very sooner than they were expected to have the project finished. So staff, along with the evaluation panels, believe that Stewart is going to be able to develop a plan that will meet the goals of the city and listen to the citizens and provide a policy framework for the future. So we respectfully request a motion to accept the evaluation panel's recommendation, move forward with contract negotiations and execution of a contract with Stewart to develop the City of Southport's comprehensive plan.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Meehan? Okay, is there a motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to start by thanking everybody who participated on the panel for this. You want to make? I'll make the motion to accept the evaluation panel's recommendation, move forward with the contract execution and negotiate a final price with Stewart Consulting Firm for them to work on the comprehensive master plan process.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, I just have one comment, Mayor. When we come back, because we have to come back once we negotiate price, the biggest thing you're going to have to make a decision on is who is going to be the steering committee. In some communities, it is planning and zoning sometimes. Sometimes it's a citizens panel. So just something to keep in the back of your head, that when we come back with the price, that you are going to have to make that big decision.
All right, no, thank you. Good discussion. Do we need to go back? Are we good, or we need to just, are you ready for?
Okay, no.
No,
So,
obviously.
Dory, minimum housing?
Yes.
This is way too much excitement.
H6.
We're almost there. We are almost there.
So it's been a little while, but we did discuss the minimum housing ordinance. And this just gives staff and, of course, our consultants another tool in our tool belt to help abate structures in the city that are derelict or abandoned. It references the current general statutes that we would need to reference, and it also cleans up the timeline for when things could happen. And our attorney has reviewed the ordinance and made some recommendations as well.
Yes, we have these, this is a great step forward. We have some of these abandoned homes, and they're falling in. Like I've mentioned before, there's one on Atlantic and Owens that's just in such disrepair that we really need to do something about that. Mr. Herman.
Yeah, and one other thing I was going to ask, and Dory, you might have been getting to this, is we also have a condemnation procedure, but one of the things that we noticed, and I think it was just because it was outdated, is essentially there wasn't a mechanism for us to be able to go and actually demolish the property if it came down to that. So we added that, I guess, enforcement mechanism to that already existing set of codes in the town, or in the city code.
That's right. If you look through the draft ordinance, the new language is in red. So we added a section about enforcement, and then further towards the back, there's a whole new Division 3 for minimum housing regulations. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them for you.
Does what does city staff feel or the board feels in terms of having a public hearing on this, or is that required?
It is not required.
Okay.
It's going into our code of ordinances, and that's not required.
All right, I want to
It'd
make that
probably
clear.
be good to have a public hearing because there are people who are living in minimum housing, and they'll want to know what's the what here.
Then if you want, you could set a public hearing for your first or second meeting in November.
And I'll also just remind the board that anytime we go and adopt a code amendment that has a criminal penalty tied to it, even though this is a little bit more of a unique situation because it's set by statute, that it requires or it can't go and be passed the first time it's introduced to the board. So essentially, anytime we have a criminal penalty for a code amendment, it's got to be presented twice.
Do it at the November, second
make
November.
a motion to set a public hearing for our first meeting in November. Second meeting in November.
First or second?
Well,
Don't waffle, make up your mind.
let's do it the first so that we're not here until 10.
Well, it'll give it 30 days to be able to be on the website and all that, if we do the second, since we're in the second meeting.
Do we have to have?
Oh,
The only thing we need to do is make sure we have enough notice to publish the notice, or enough time to publish the notice ahead of the meeting, so.
So there's no number of days required, so you could do it the first meeting is fine.
Yeah, I make a
whichever
motion
one you
that we
like.
set a public hearing for our first meeting in November.
We would have time.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem. So we'll have the public hearing at the first meeting, Board of Aldermen meeting in November. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
And Wooten, you are on, and Cheyenne, you are awesome, girl. You are awesome.
All right.
I was preparing my can-can dance just in case. But I'm glad we got it worked out. Thank you, Cheyenne, Dorothy, Bonnie. We got it worked out. Good evening, Mayor, Aldermen, Alderwomen. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here again. I'm Gary Hartong with the Wooten Company. Out of our Raleigh office with me tonight is Jack Behrens out of our Wilmington office, who I'm sure you have met in the past. Want to spend a couple minutes reviewing the water regionalization study in recognition of your full agenda. My comments will be brief. I'll try to maintain that 10-minute mark, especially with the delay that I've caused. But again, to reiterate the point of the study, it was to provide a high-level examination of the options for continued water supply and distribution for the city. This study was conducted similar to the sewer study that Dave Malinauskas presented to you several weeks ago, in which the city ultimately elected to partner or to have further negotiations with Brunswick County. I do want to reiterate that this is not a water and sewer rate study. Was not conducted to the same detail that Mr. Beauchamp was referring to earlier with the electric rates, but we looked at it more from an overall perspective on a per customer basis. Just as a reminder, the city did receive a grant for this study last fall, and so that is we've been working on it for the last 9 to 12 months. The objectives are pretty clear. One of the things that was driving this study was there under number 2. You can see where Brunswick County, the water rate for a residential meter using 5,000 gallons is about a little over $36, whereas in Southport, that same usage is about $65. So there's a $28 difference, which I think is one of the driving forces behind looking at options down the road. Secondly, again, estimating the fiscal impact the alternatives would have on Southport's customers. Again, not necessarily through a rate study, but overall, looking at different options, dividing those options by the number of customers served by those systems, and just looking at an overall cost to see what the difference was, if there was a magnitude of scale difference, and I think you'll see that there is. And then lastly, recommend an alternative or alternatives. So we looked at 4. First one was retain ownership and operations, and that is really maintaining the status quo, which is purchasing water from Brunswick County, but then the city owns its water distribution, storage infrastructure, and maintains it and performs all repairs associated with it. Second one is merging with Brunswick County, in which Brunswick County would take over ownership and operations of the system. The third would be regionalization with another Brunswick County entity. The closest one would be Brunswick Regional, H2Go. Their primary service area is Leland. It's a couple miles up the road. I think you'll see the cost on that is extremely high. And then lastly, looking at a new reverse osmosis water treatment plant, building your own system and providing your own water to your customers. Again, another very costly option, as you'll see. So this is an overall cost summary. We've broken it into 2 columns. The capital cost, again, those would be the estimated costs to continue providing water supply to your customers. The 4 alternatives are listed down the left. Again, the first one, when I say retain ownership and operations, that is a continued purchase from Brunswick County, and then regionalization with Brunswick Regional Water and Sewer H2Go would essentially enact a similar agreement that you have with Brunswick County. It'd be more of a regionalization versus a merger that we're talking about under alternative number 2. So you'll see very little, if any, associated capital costs with alternatives 1 and 2. You already purchase water from the county through 3 different connection points. There wouldn't be much, if any, necessary immediate upgrades to continue in that arrangement. However, if we look at options 3 and 4, I think you'll see quite a difference. You have about $123 million. That's sounds like a round number, but it's a pretty significant cost for transmission. Those are really transmission costs to run 23 miles of 16-inch piping from Leland to Southport and to booster pump stations. Again, significant investment there. You'd have a very similar investment, just over $100 million associated with alternative number 4, and that would be for construction of a new 4 MGD facility. Our projection was that the city would see a maximum daily demand of 3.5 to 4 MGD in approximately 20 years. That's why we put our cost estimate together at 4 MGD. But again, it's not just a treatment facility. You have wells that would be associated with that, groundwater wells. You'd have the piping from the wells to the treatment plant. You'd have the treatment plant itself, any associated ground storage, and then ultimate disposal of the reject water back into a local surface water. So it's a rather intensive project, but we estimated that again to be about $102 million from a capital perspective. Over on the right are the projected operation and maintenance costs We fast forwarded, or we projected these costs for year 2027. We tried to put every alternative on a common year. Retaining ownership and operations, we would expect that to be just under $2 million. You say, wow, $30 million for Brunswick County. Again, that is a much larger system with much greater needs, a higher number of employees, and you'll see on the next page where these numbers work out. Regionalization with Brunswick Regional Water and Sewer H2Go, we would expect that to be, again, a similar arrangement to what you have now with Brunswick County. So it'd be a bulk purchase type agreement. And then lastly, we think there could be some cost savings on a operation side with having your own treatment plant, but those are outweighed by the associated capital costs. So how do we look at all of these costs together? Well, what we do is we do a 20-year present worth summary, and we take the estimated capital costs from the previous slide, and then we take 20 years of the operation and maintenance costs, convert those into today's dollars to get basically $1 today is worth more than it is $1 tomorrow, so the dollar is discounted. And we say, what is the total present worth cost for each of these alternatives? You'll see alternative one, your status quo is about $24 million over 20 years. A merger with Brunswick County is projected to be slightly under $400 million. Regionalization with Brunswick Regional H2Go, $150 million, and a new RO plant by $123 million. Well, those are big numbers, and how do you look at that on a customer basis? Well, if we look at the first two alternatives up there, the retained ownership and the merger with Brunswick County, if you take the first one and we divide it, that $24 million, by the 4,000 customers that are projected to be connected to the city in 2027, it's about $5,856. If you take the $396 million and you divide it by the 70,000 customers that are projected to be connected to Brunswick County's system in 2027, you're about $5,706. So you see those two alternatives are pretty close. The last two are alternatives 3 and 4 with costs of $36,000 per customer, $29,000 per customer, almost $30,000. We eliminated those from further consideration. Just the magnitude of cost difference didn't warrant further consideration of those. I do want to make a comment about option 2, and that really has to do with the overall operations and maintenance costs. So we expect, or the city expects, to see about a 40% decrease in the bulk water purchase costs by partnering with the county. And those costs alone represent 60% of your annual water system expenditures. So if we take 40% reduction of 60% of the cost, we're looking at about a 36% reduction right off the top, just from in expenditures. I'm not going to say rates because that would be inaccurate. I'm talking expenditures on the water system. Partnering would knock down those costs about 36% right off the top. And then the city could choose how to take that cost difference and apply it elsewhere in its other city budgets, or if it needs to maintain that difference through rates to fund other initiatives. So let's talk a little bit about the advantages and the disadvantages of options 1 and 2. Again, option 1 shown on the left, option 2 shown on the right. Option 1, really, you maintain control of the system. You dictate what happens in the future. You continue to negotiate with Brunswick County on a bulk water purchase rate. There are some costs upcoming that have been identified in the report. Table 4 and 5 in the report identifies about $1 million in water distribution costs that are needed at some point. That was from the city's 2021 asset management plan. The county's also looking at $80 million in this general service area and improvements over the years. So those are things that must be considered when we're talking about continuing to be responsible for the capital costs within the city. And again, as we talked a little bit earlier about with the SDFs, you know, those fees and water fees and SDF fees can be set to be competitive with your neighbors in order to encourage growth, or you can artificially set them higher if you want to discourage growth. So you maintain some autonomy and some control there. On the right side, I want to insert the word purchase rates there, lower water purchase rates, from becoming a part of a larger system. The water personnel, like the sewer system, as Dave talked about in the previous presentation, could logically be hired by the county if the county determines that continued operation and maintenance of this system was necessary and they needed the additional staff, the additional resources. But again, on the negative or on the disadvantage side, it says loss of water revenues results in increased taxes and fees. Again, I would insert the word may result. Again, it's up to, or insert the word may. The city council can determine how any deficit from loss of water sales is gained through other means. And again, the other disadvantage is development planning. Being a partner of a much larger system, you may not have complete control of the capacity or your capacity needs. I do want to expand just a little bit on that personnel comment that I made, and that was I want everybody to recognize that your water and sewer revenues pay for employees working in 6 different departments within the city. In fact, about 26 positions, totaling in 2022 dollars about $425,000 in salaries. Within the water and sewer department alone, there's 5 positions, totaling about $253,000 in salaries. So if that $253,000 is absorbed by Brunswick County, let's say Brunswick County hires all 5, brings them right onto the system, we're assuming equivalent pay. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but that remainder of $172,000, again, that is the 425 minus the 253. That remainder of the $172,000 is where your water and sewer revenues cover costs of employees working throughout the city. Hope I didn't confuse anybody too much. Yes, sir.
When we were doing the sewer, we eventually had to come up with a figure. The manager and her staff came up with that figure of $35 million. So you take all the money we have, yada, yada, and give it to the county. And then there was a delta between what the county would need to fix things on our side. So if we were to let the county do the water, is there a dollar amount in the study that says we'd have to come up with approximately X number of dollars in order to have this happen like we had to do with the sewer?
We don't foresee the same level of capital expenditure associated with the water that we do for the sewer. Again, you're already connected, you're purchasing water now. I know you have a tank maintenance, or you're sharing a pro rata portion of your tank maintenance contract with the county. I'm sure that will continue. There are some items identified in tables 4 and 5, some capital improvement items, what I would say are longer term items, but those don't necessarily tie into your immediate need to continue water supply and distribution throughout the city.
And the advantage of merging as opposed to just giving it to them?
Well, great transitions.
Are you using the word merge to say, like we're doing with the sewer, they're going to take it?
Yes,
okay.
that is how we're using it.
I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page on that.
Yes, sir. So again, really, we see 2 feasible options moving ahead. One being retaining ownership, basically maintaining the status quo. That gives you complete control over your future development planning, your capacity. Not saying that a merger would not allow that. You would just be sharing that capacity with other Brunswick County entities and be more subject to the county's water supply and availability for you. The reduced, again, there's a couple things that I think you may want to consider. Again, that's reduced rates for water transmission. More importantly, we did take what I'll call a swag at the value of Southport's water distribution system. And we, using the assets identified in that 2021 asset management plan, we depreciated those assets, assigned a cost to them, and we project that the existing system depreciated value is roughly in the range of about $17 million. I would not hang my hat on that number. I think that number is, could be 20% low, could be 20% high. I would encourage you to do, if that becomes part of the negotiation, a more detailed analysis for that cost to see what it is, what it might represent in your negotiations. And then lastly, I think we need to point out that Southport's existing staff have a lot, not only the staff out in the field, but your financial staff and your administrative staff and your engineers and everybody behind the scenes have a lot of knowledge about Southport's system. So I think Brunswick County would benefit by employing, if the city chose not to, or if somehow it works out in the merger, I think retaining the staff would be beneficial for the city and for Brunswick County. That summarizes the report in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Any questions?
If I'm not mistaken, I'm looking at the costs that we'll have to figure out how to pay for in a different way from the sewer. Was it 1.6 million? Am I remembering that?
That sounds
Does that
about
sound
right. I
right?
think between the two systems, it might be 3.2, without me digging and pulling things up.
Well, so then for the water, you're saying 172,000.
I'm saying for water and sewer on that salary portion alone.
But that's for the employees directly connected to it, not all the other expenses that, shared expenses from administration and all of that.
The 172 is the gap between, let me make sure I say this correctly. The 172 is the gap between the employees that are funded directly by your water and sewer department versus the overall expenses for salaries that the water and sewer covers. Maybe a cleaner way of saying that. So your water and sewer fund pays for salaries out of 6 different departments, 26 positions, for a total of about 425. 253 is directly related to the water and sewer. That gap of 172 is folks from finance, administration, other departments that your current water and sewer revenues are helping to pay for, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I like your slogan, a tradition of designing the future.
Thank you.
That's very, very good, and that's probably what I understood most of the presentation. And I'll be honest, it's this very, very complex numbers. It only took 2 semesters of calculus, and I was grateful for that. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Nice report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so next would be this was a discussion only today in questions. Next would be H5, amendments to the Parks and Recreation Ordinance. Ms. Hemphill and Major Burke. He's in the corner.
Okay, before you is some of the proposed additional information and changes to the Parks and Recreation ordinances for our parks. Basically, everything that you see that is in the yellow portion is where there is a change that takes place. A lot of them are just the addition of our new parks. We had a few parks identified, but we went in and added the names of the remaining parks. We also defined the word camping. That one of our prohibited activities said overnight camping, but we did go in and define what that was, and we defined what public property is. And I think that's the majority of the changes. And, Major Burt went in and put the type of penalties in there, for those prohibited activities. So you want to talk?
Yeah, for the most part, like we were talking about the earlier ordinances, these ordinances were already in place, just needed to be reviewed and updated because of the events that happened a couple of months ago. Brought to our attention some of the things were left out, like some of the parks, and the addition of that particular penalty, we just added those to the end to bring it up to date with Senate Bill 300 and a couple of other things that gave us the ability to add the civil ordinance process and the criminal element to it if we need to. It just gave us a couple more options as far as how to enforce it, what was already on the books.
I do have a question about Fort Johnson. If I leave this building after this is passed and I walk across there to get my car, it's after dusk. Is that really what? Do we have a problem? I mean, we have a lot of people that come down here in the middle of the night to watch the boats and see the stars, look at the moon, do all of that stuff. Are we putting that particular park, which I don't know that we have a problem with? I agree with you, but no sleeping, all of that stuff. But merely being in that park after dusk with a number of people who use the waterfront and the park to walk through to look at everything in the middle of the night. They're up at 4 o'clock, as you well know, 3 o'clock in the morning, when the moon is doing something. I don't want to make them criminals.
Waterfront Park doesn't close, is that correct?
Correct. Waterfront
So
Park
it's
is the
open.
exception.
Waterfront
Now,
Park is closed.
No,
Fort
I'm talking
Johnson
about
is
Fort
totally
Johnson
separate.
right over here.
Correct. I'm sorry?
The Fort Johnson, right?
Correct. Well, yeah, Waterfront Park is the one park that does not close, obviously, because of what it is.
Correct.
Fort Johnson itself is separate and apart, and it's included in the new ordinance. It's brought in there as well.
That is my question about
far as
people
dusk
using. People use that park to get to the other park. They walk back and forth. If I leave here tonight to walk across the park to get to my car, I'm technically breaking the law. Is that really? Do we need to have it that you can't be in Fort Johnson Park after dusk, or can we refine it that you can't sleep, camp, make fires, and all the other stuff, but merely existing there? Is that an issue that we need to have?
If you want it to apply specifically to those elements of camping, sleeping, cooking, et cetera, and a closed time, that's totally up to you. We standardized it where it was dusk, dawn to dusk, which is what a lot of other agencies, I think Wilmington's are the same way. Granted, their waterfront park, I don't know that it applies specifically to that area, but like here, like I said, waterfront park, we're not going to close. So if you want to add a timeline, that's perfectly easy.
I apologize if I'm not making it clear. The only park, I don't have a problem with all the other parks, but because of the number of people who use this park and the waterfront park in the middle of the night, I don't want to make them criminals by being in the park. I do agree with you can't campfire, sleep, all that stuff. I'm just concerned that what we're going to do, what we're doing, basically, is we're making another statute that will not enforce. So we've made a whole bunch of statutes in the past year we have no intention of enforcing. And so this is just another one. I don't see the purpose of it, because when we target a certain person with the enforcement, and we had all the other people who are violating it, and we let them go, that doesn't hold well.
Correct. And again, Waterfront Park's not going to, it's not applicable.
I understand that, sir. I'm talking about this park.
Correct.
Yeah. And people use this park to get to that park.
Correct. And they'll use Franklin Square Park to get across if they're walking through there and they don't know it's closed. We'll respond and address that specific issue, whether they get arrested, cited, or whatever will be, again, as we've said before, based on the totality of circumstances. If they're a tourist coming from Ohio and they park on Davis and walk across Fort Johnston at 2 o'clock in the morning, the officer sees them, stops them, and engages with them, and we did not know, then that'll
I'm
be
less
the case.
concerned, I'm always concerned about all human beings, but I'm less concerned about a tourist going astray as opposed to people who live here and get up in the middle of the morning, way before at least I get up, and do their exercise program down here,
Right.
which we know that includes judges and as well as other people. I just find that one park to have a ban from dusk to dawn.
I agree. You can
I guess
modify it
we,
whichever way you want to go.
maybe we're not being clear. That is your decision.
Right.
You know, like Major Burke said, when we came up with these, we did it kind of as a standard thing with all of the parks. And when these were originally written, we did not have Fort Johnston. But I understand what you're saying, and that would be your decision.
I look at Fort Johnson, and Major, you're more attuned to this than I am, because your people are out there all the time. But Fort Johnson is more likely to have somebody traversing it in the evening than some of the other parks. And because they're going to go down to the waterfront park, which is in fact open to everybody. We don't seem to have a problem with today or in the past with Fort Johnson, do we?
The only problem we're having with Fort Johnston is people digging holes for digging the metal detecting, and we've addressed that issue as well. But if you want to put a modification in to either exclude Fort Johnston and include it as part of Waterfront Park that does not close, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, the way it was written was intended to just standardize across the board so that there was no back and forth trying to figure out who's open and who's not, like Cavernous Park and so many other parks. So if you want to put it in, that's not an issue. I have no problem with it, and I don't think it would affect what we do and how we do it if that was the case.
I
That is
believe
what I was
you're
looking
talking
for.
about Garrison Lawn, right?
Yeah, right out here,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's not the same as Fort Johnson.
Okay.
We're talking about the Garrison Lawn.
Correct. Yeah, I think we were using different terminology,
Yeah,
but we're
the
both
same-
talking about
we're-
the same piece
You
of
and I are
dirt.
on the same page, yes.
Correct.
So that is my comment to the board, that I don't think that we need to include that one park in this whole thing, since it's physically attached to Waterfront Park.
And again, if you want to have that included as part of Waterfront Park or added specifically to eliminate the Garrison Lawn and clarify that's perfectly fine. That's just a minute or two to make some changes.
Thank you for both of you. I appreciate the work that you put into this.
But that does not eliminate the part where we're looking to add prohibitions on camping, overnight sleeping, and so forth.
Correct. It won't make any changes to those other. The only
To
thing
that
it will do
part.
is just allow that provision for people to be actually on the Garrison Lawn after
Okay.
hours.
Heather, I've got some questions. I think they're kind of just wordsmithing things, I think, but it looks like we're missing Article 2 where we're just talking about, you got Cavernous Park in the headline, but then in paragraph A, there's no mention of Cavernous Park. that need to be in there?
Yes, I mean, that's an oops.
Yeah, and then it's low, it's low white, right? We call it low white
Yes.
in the title, but it just says Low Park.
Yes.
N-A, and yes, Low Davis Park. And then we have the same thing in section 1227, paragraph A, it says Low Park.
Yes, we can make those corrections.
Thank you. Everybody needs their credit.
Any further questions?
I assume that, because I printed off Brady's comments, and so I'm assuming that's what you've got in front of you. It wasn't initially in the packet. It was a different version. And I'm still struggling with, and Brady did ask the question about defining public property. How is that definition applied in this when it's not saying any other reference?
We put the definition in there simply to eliminate the possibility that someone's doing, on public property, there are some private property places where this stuff could be allowed. Simply just to try to outline specifically when we talk about public property, what areas we're talking about. To separate public and private, just to add a little bit of definition. And honestly, it gives the officers another opportunity in the street to say this is what we're talking about. Some clarification.
So it's essentially just clarifying that all these parks are public, even though, I mean, that's gone without saying, but honestly, I'd rather have that in there just for y'all's backup of clarity, even though it might be overkill, so to speak.
Correct. That's exactly what it is. Like I said, it also outlines the streets and the roads and alleyways as well.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Again, this is just for discussion and presentation. We'll bring it back for a vote and modifications as needed at the next Board of Aldermen meeting.
Mr. Mayor, for clarification.
Yes.
When you say they're going to bring it back with clarifications, I'm not sure what our instructions are to them so they could actually make clarifications. I'm not clear on that.
Well, you led the discussion about
if we're good with that, I'm ecstatic over that whole idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, that's very reasonable to, someone wants to sit in Adirondack chairs and that type thing. I think that's very reasonable.
Oh, when we put the movies out here, we don't lock up the kids. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank y'all. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, H10, selection of consultant for a parking study. You know, parking's not a very big issue in Southport, right? So, but we definitely need to look into it regardless. And I'll call on our Assistant City Manager, Dorothy Dutton.
Hello again. So we put out an RFQ for a parking study, and the way it was put out, a copy of it is in your packet, but we gave them options as far as how it would be set up. We thought it would be important to include both off-season and our busy season and some festivals to get an accurate account of what our parking situation is like. We received 4 bids for the parking study, and one was essentially eliminated right away because it focused only on paid parking. There were 2 firms that had just a little experience with this sort of project, but Walker Consultants had a lot of experience. We did rate them individually, and then there's a chart included in your packet with the scores, so you can see that. And I think pretty much unanimously we chose or recommend Walker Consultants to do the study, and I called their references, and all of them gave glowing reviews for the work that they've done. They said that they were nothing but positive. They were timely in performing the study and reports. They did a wonderful job speaking to the town council. Highly recommend their services without hesitation. Interactions with Walker have been professional and cooperative. And Chapel Hill has been working with them since 2017. They've done a parking study, a follow-up parking work, and they've always met or exceeded their expectations. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and at this point we were just asking for the board to make a decision on the recommendation and allow the city manager to move forward with negotiating.
Okay, any questions for the Assistant City Manager? Is there a motion? Okay. Well, why don't you say move, motion to go with Walker Consultants. I know, she just says so moved. No. Motion to approve the selection of Walker Consultants to complete the downtown parking study and authorize the city manager to negotiate a contract with the firm. That's the motion by Alderman Davis. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Carroll. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item H11. This is the North Carolina Department of Public Safety Cybersecurity Grant Memorandum of Agreement with the North Carolina League of Municipalities. Looks like there was a grant of $40,000. And I will call on, there's an Assistant City Manager. Will you be doing that one as well? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. This grant, our IT consultant, Eileen, applied for this grant. The purpose would be that we just recently, I think at the last meeting, approved a memorandum of understanding or agreement with the North Carolina League of Municipalities to do some cybersecurity work for us and consulting. So it is our hope that, and we have received confirmation that it is fine to use the grant money that we received through Department of Public Safety to pay for the League of Municipalities work and consultant that they would do. At the last meeting, I think in September, you approved for the mayor to sign the no debt certification that was sent in. So now included in your, I think I emailed it to you separately so it wasn't overwhelming, the copy of the memorandum of understanding for the grant. And if the board approves, then we can continue with the signing of the document via DocuSign.
I move to approve the MOA for the NCDPS State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carried. And thank you to Eileen Hennessy for getting us this grant. The next item is we'll do our committee reports. Alderman Allen? Alderman Carroll? Alderman Alt?
Nothing, sir.
Okay. Alderman Davis? No. Alderman Lombardi?
No, for beautification. Oh, thank you. For beautification, we'll be interviewing 4 candidates for open positions on the committee, and results will be reported at the next meeting. Of course, the beautification committee will be meeting the first Saturday in November, and they'll be doing some I think they're going to be doing some staining. They're almost finished with it, and weeding and planting and mulching and what they normally do. And they'll be meeting at the old jail at 9 p.m. Anybody wants to help, we certainly appreciate it. And I have to mention again, I said this at the last meeting, but I recently had my knee replaced, as I think everybody knows. And I just want to say we are so fortunate to have this hospital so close at hand for anything that you need. The doctors, nurses, assistants, and the entire staff made me feel comfortable at all times while I was there. I also started PT and continue to have PT, and a thumbs up to that whole crew. They are great. Thank you, Dozier Hospital.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. As far as committees go, I would like to remind everybody that the planning board meets next Thursday at 6 p.m. here for their regular meeting.
And the ABC board met last evening, and sales are up 17% for September. They're doing a great job, and they're yes. Thank you, Alderman Carroll. And, and they're putting in some palmetto trees soon and continuing to work on their landscaping. Item J, Manager's Report.
Yes, very quickly, I did email to everybody. There's been a few questions on the kayak launch and the timeline. Just so everybody realizes, the application for funding was September of '22. February and March of '23 was when all of you approved that contract. In March of '23, we started meeting with an adjacent property owner regarding a easement that was needed. And we kept trying to work with the person through May. It didn't really work out, so now we went into redesign phase, and we are now in revisions. And we have asked the city attorney to assist with easements, documents needed, and we're working very closely with Morningstar. They have been awesome to get this revision done. So right now, we will get CAMA permitting ready for December, January, and project construction and closeout will be spring, summer of '24. And then I did pass out tonight the latest capital projects list to all of you. We'll put it on the website for the public. But I also want to take a chance. I was talking to Chief Drew today. The amount of work and how much has been accomplished by the staff of this city in the year that I've been here is truly amazing, amazing. And I really want to thank all of them for all the hard work. We've got a heck of a lot going on, and yet they come and they make sure that it all gets done in a very quick and efficient manner. So big kudos to them. And then lastly, we got a few anniversaries. We have fire, quite a number of them. Jonathan Bullard, Mark Coy, Madison Drew, Alexander Finley are all having anniversaries. David Susby, if I'm saying that right, and Ralph Treadway. Sean Pendergrass in grounds maintenance, 4 years, and Maureen Meehan, that was just here, our city planner, 1 year. And that's what I got, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yes, our city staff is moving right along, and you know, these projects, my goodness, fantastic. What a great list, and we keep moving forward. I just have very few brief comments. I could not let the day go by without mentioning today is University Day. UNC at Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill was founded on this day, October 12th, 1793. The cornerstone was laid for Old East, which is the oldest state building in the nation. So we celebrate that. Also, I want to again congratulate Chief Drew, not only for Fire Prevention Week, with these wonderful chili supper with the firefighters. My goodness, they over at Caswell Beach Substation and then in Southport, just marvelous events, so thank you. And also, Heather Hemphill, Parks and Rec, thank you for Captain Charlie's fishing tournament. I'm telling you, I've never seen so many excited parents and children with the tiniest little fish, but it was just beautiful, so thank you for that. And and again, I want to thank EMS for their service today on a call that I attended, and they did such great work, and I really appreciate that. And again, thank you all for being here for this excellent meeting. Next will be board comments. Alderman Allen. Alderman Carroll.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that the Historic Preservation Commission is having a public input town hall meeting on October 16th at 6 p.m. and I believe that's being hosted right here. So if you got some feedback about that, the ordinance, I think the proposed ordinance is online for you to review in advance. And then on November 4th, this is a small plug, but for myself, I am participating in a fundraiser that is being hosted at Southport Tap and Cellar November 4th from 2 to 5 to benefit St. Baldrick's Foundation. And I'm halfway to my $5,000 goal, and I will be shaving my head that day. So should be a good time.
I didn't hear who you're benefiting.
St. Baldrick's Foundation,
Okay.
they do childhood
Children's
cancer research. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, she's got a check for you for $2,500. So here we go. She's ready. But only if she can run her hand through your hair first before it goes. Alderman Alt.
I want to see if there's actually tattoos under there. That's what I've heard. I have nothing.
Alderman Davis. Nothing. Alderman Lombardi. Mayor Pro Tem Mosteller.
I have a couple fun things. I have the City of Southport Parks and Recreation presents Spooks or Treat. October 27th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Halloween crafts and treats, costume contest for all ages 4 and under, 5 to 7, 8 to 10, and 11 to 13 with categories for the most original, scariest, and cutest. So I believe, Heather, that is in your main office. You'll be celebrating there by the gym. So be sure, again, that's October 27th from 6 p.m. to 7:30. Now it is the season for the 7th annual Sydney's Halloween Bowser Bash. So this is the 7th year we're celebrating our animal welfare officer and volunteers put on the Halloween Bowser Bash Saturday, October 21st from 10 to 12. And it'll be on the Garrison lawn. Pet costume, you can enter the pet costume contest with a $5 donation, and the benefits, the proceeds of that will go to Pausability. Pausability is a volunteer nonprofit that raises funds to assist local rescue groups and support programs to improve animal welfare in Brunswick and New Hanover counties. So be sure to participate. It's very much fun.
Thank you. One other thing I did not mention, I apologize, Chief. October 31st, please be at the fire station, trunk or treat. So we look forward to that as well. Oh, fire symposium is Monday, 2 o'clock. Thank you. All right, our next item, I'll call on Mr. Brady Herman, our city attorney, for discussion on closed session.
Yeah, just for the benefit of the public, the general statutes for closed session require that any governing board for municipalities to go and disclose the citation for which they're going into closed session. And there's about 10 reasons you can go to closed session. The most common are attorney-client privilege, personnel discussions, and real property acquisition. The statutes are very specific that all that's required is that this board go and state the reasons of going into closed session via those statutes. There's a few caveats in there dealing with attorney-client privilege. If we're talking about a lawsuit, you have to name the parties. But for the most part, that's all that's required. However, I will have to go and say, and this is what Alderman Alt alluded to, and I believe what was discussed at last meeting, is there's a case from about the 1990s that basically stated that in terms of real property acquisition, that if the public requests that this board or any board can go and disclose the property owner's name, the property owner's location, and the potential proposed use for the property. But again, that's not required by statute. That's something that the North Carolina courts have held and have not overruled. So with that if a member from the public goes and requests that, then my advice to this board is to go and disclose that information. I also want to go and reiterate that there are times when this board has to go into closed session and they have to go and give directives either to the city manager or myself. And sometimes that requires them to make, lack of a better term, an informal decision, which could require a straw poll of them having to go and come to the decision. That's not violating the closed session or open meetings laws. In particular situations when you're allowed to go and do that, I guess an example that I've experienced a lot with some of my municipalities is If we have a lawsuit and I give this board a settlement agreement in closed session, they can go and approve that settlement agreement, and then it goes and gets executed, and at some point, that settlement agreement becomes a part of the minutes of the meeting. And then there's other times where they have to go and make decisions in closed session and then immediately come out of closed session and open session and go and vote. So I just want to be clear, again, what the parameters are in terms of going into closed session and what can sort of happen in closed session as well.
Any questions for Mr. Herman?
I do.
Board?
Did we not hear a member of the public request that information? So what do you advise?
I think I reiterated already that I advise this board to divulge that information when the mayor or whoever goes into closed session.
I'm sorry, when we go in, or who would do that?
The mayor would?
Okay.
Yep. Or whoever going into closed session, you can go and state real property acquisition, and then with that motion, you can go and say to discuss X property owned by Y property owner for X purpose.
Can they request that information after the fact?
Excuse me?
Can they request that information after the fact? I believe the word was used before closed session, but if we came out of closed session, could they then request that information still, if it hadn't already been?
I suppose they could. I don't know. In that case, what happened was the reporter asked for it. The board looked at the attorney, and the attorney says, you don't have to go and disclose that. They went into closed session. They wouldn't disclose it, and somehow it made it all the way to the Court of Appeals.
So this board is supposed to disclose, if they go into closed session for a real estate issue, they have to give the property, name of what the property is, who owns it, and the purpose. So why would you need to go into closed session?
Only if requested.
Only if requested.
Yeah. Right. The price is the big thing that is confidential.
Does it have to be like a public PIO request, or what kind of, request? How and how long do you have to answer?
In that case, it was just at the public meeting itself, according to the facts of that case.
Go ahead, Robert.
I would,
I want to point something out. I mean, if we're getting attorney's advice, we're going to act on our attorney's advice. So accordingly, but I just want to throw this out here for the idea that this is forcing transparency. It's difficult. I can tell you, I'm going to use as an example, we tried to rent space for our police department at where the Walmart shopping center is, and that bubbled up into the press. I mean, not press, but up into public conversation, and we lost that before we got it under contract. We lost that opportunity. So most of you know about real estate negotiation. What I want to say about this is that whenever we decide, if and when we decide that we want to put an offer on something, it is simply an offer to purchase. It will require the planning board to review it. The acquisition, if you'll go to the UDO, you'll see that the planning board is integral to our transparency. We passed that 4 years ago to make sure that we had process in place that afforded us a lot of public input, and the board cannot take any action until the planning board comes back with a recommendation, and there's a time frame in that ruling. But what I'm saying is, we have transparency in our process, and I just wanted to point that out.
Well, it's unfortunate that we're in a position that compromises the negotiations, so that we can call it transparency. That's the unfortunate part.
No, what you're doing is you're following the appeals court decision, which is the law. It doesn't make any difference whether we like it or we don't like it. It is the law.
Well, did Madam...
And we're going to
okay,
do what our
so-
attorney says.
Yeah, and it sounds like we can actually disclose quite a bit of information that was disclosed in, or obtained in closed session. So, you know, I have a real issue with this because even Madam Lowe Davis, when we went into the last closed session to discuss real property, first of all, nobody showed up to ask what it was. Madam Lowe Davis never mentioned that she had a potential or the appearance of a conflict. However, one of her family members was benefiting financially from that conversation. So when we were talking about the Harper properties, I believe that Jason represents the Harpers with regards to those transactions. Was any of that ever discussed or disclosed?
He is not a member of my family.
Okay.
Are we going to go into who's going to make money off this deal?
Let's
to make
disclose
money.
what we need to disclose.
I'm going to make money.
Can I just say as somebody who's been in this business 30 years, and I agree, you have to follow the court case or whatever. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. You are negotiating on behalf of a municipality for a property. And now you're going to send all that information out into the public, where all of a sudden, as was mentioned by Alderman Mosteller, you're going to find out who's going to be competing against you and raise that price. It is stupid, and it's a dumb law, and I've never seen it, but I understand, Brady, you have to go by the court case, and that's up to the board, but this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Do we need a motion to go into closed session regarding attorney-client privilege? I'll make a motion to do so.
Yeah, that's a separate issue from property.
Well, there's a motion, I made a motion that we go for the first closed session item.
There's a motion to go into closed session for attorney-client privilege discussion. Is there a second? Mr. Lombardi. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're now going into closed session, and board, how about taking just a 10-minute break, and then we'll convene in closed session. Thank you.
Would you explain to people that process? I think a lot of people think we're leaving.
No, of course, we're not leaving. I mean, you may leave, of course, but we're going into closed session for attorney-client privilege. And then we'll be coming out of closed session, and then we're going back into closed session for a real estate issue. So that's where we are right now.
one, next thing?
Huh?
You want me for the next thing?
No.
Yeah, bust
Well, I
out.
guess not, though, who knows?
All right, I need a motion to go back into open session.
So, second.
Okay. Alderman Carroll, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? Okay. We're back in open session, and I'll call on City Manager Bonnie Theron to. We're going back into closed session, but we need to announce about the property.
Yes, the property is 1105 North Howe Street, owned by Jonathan and Suzanne Hatch, and will be used for future city use.
I'll ask for a motion to go into closed session to discuss this. Alderman Allen, second. Mayor Pro Tem, all in favor? Okay, we'll go back into closed session. Motion to go out of closed session. Alderman Allen, the second by Mayor Pro Tem. We can now, it was a great meeting. Thank y'all. Motion to adjourn. Alderman Allen and Mayor Pro Tem, all in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.